Frederick the Great, the King of Prussia, wasn't just a military genius who turned his kingdom into a European powerhouse. He was also an intellectual, a philosopher king, a composer, and, most importantly, a master of sarcasm and wit. Whether mocking his enemies, roasting his advisors, or engaging in a legendary love-hate relationship with Voltaire, Frederick's sharp tongue was just as powerful as his army. So today, we're diving into some of his most brilliant, cutting, and downright hilarious quotes. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be entertained by the man who made sarcasm a royal tradition. Let's get started. Frederick the Great wasn't your typical king. He preferred books to banquets, philosophy to politics, and sarcasm to, well, almost everything. He ruled Prussia with an iron fist, but with a quill just as sharp. His wit was legendary, and no one, not even Voltaire, was safe from it. Frederick had a long and complicated friendship with Voltaire. They admired each other's intellect, but their letters were basically the 18th century version of a Twitter feud. At one point, Voltaire wrote to Frederick, complaining about how cold it was in Prussia. Frederick's response: "You are cold, Voltaire. Well, come closer to the fire of my wit." It is a polite way of saying, stop whining and enjoy my genius. Frederick didn't just mock his enemies. His ministers and advisors got their fair share of royal burns. One day, after listening to a particularly bad military suggestion, he sighed and said, "If I were to follow your advice, my dear sir, I would soon have neither army nor kingdom." Translation: you're terrible at your job. Frederick was one of the greatest military strategists in history, but even in the heat of battle, he couldn't resist sarcasm. When an officer hesitated to charge into combat, Frederick shouted, "You fear death. Good news! Your fear won't stop it from coming." Ah yes, motivational speeches, Frederick style. Frederick didn't sugarcoat things. When one nobleman complained about how hard life was, Frederick responded, "Life is like playing the violin in public and learning the instrument as one goes on." Basically, nobody knows what they're doing. Just fake it till you make it. Frederick the Great's love for art, music, and philosophy didn't exactly sit well with his father, Frederick William I, a man who thought emotions were for the weak, and that the only good son was a militarized son. One day, when Frederick was caught secretly reading poetry, his father sneered, "A real king does not waste his time on such nonsense." Frederick's response? Become one of the most cultured rulers in history while also conquering half of Europe. A poetic way of saying, "Watch me." Frederick had zero patience for incompetence. Once, after listening to an exceptionally ridiculous military suggestion, he turned to the advisor and said, "If you wish to improve the art of war, perhaps begin by improving the art of thinking." Translation: try using your brain for once. Forget energy drinks. Frederick powered his empire on coffee and snuff, lots of it. He once declared, A man cannot rule properly without coffee and tobacco. Basically, the 18th century equivalent of saying, "Don't talk to me until I've had my morning caffeine." Even in his final years, Frederick remained sharp as ever. When someone asked how he wanted to be remembered, he simply said, "History will do with me as it pleases. I'll be dead. What do I care?" And that, my friends, is the final level of not giving a damn. Frederick the Great, philosopher, warrior, and a world-class sarcasm expert. He didn't just rule Prussia, he roasted it. Frederick the Great wasn't just a king. He was a philosopher, a military genius, and a professional roaster. His wit was as legendary as his conquests. And centuries later, we're still laughing at his sharp words. And if he were here today, he'd probably have the best Twitter account in history. So, what do you think? Would Frederick the Great have been the ultimate Twitter king? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history with a side of wit. Until next time, stay sarcastic.